What is it that the Raiders need to do in 2024 to consider the season a success? That plus a lot more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 19th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thanks so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, we appreciate that. Really helps the show grow as it does each and every day. That's because of the support of you, Raider Nation. Of course, the efforts of my man Ari does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good. We definitely appreciate him. We shout him out and check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. You want to be a part of the show? That's the way to do it. Again, 707-654-4693. A lot of feedback coming up in segment number 3. Calls and texts about a bunch of different subjects from 65 years of Raider football, how you became a Raider fan, Davante Adams, of course, that conversation that's going on, the quarterback situation, and training camp coming up next week. So we'll get as much feedback in as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about an article that I saw on NFL.com from my guy Adam Rank. Does a fantastic job for NFL.com, NFL Network. He's a guy that put out an article, and he's doing it for all the teams across the league. Basically, it's the state of the team. What I've been doing, the state of the team, but he's really breaking it down, state of the franchise, talking about what it will take for every team to have a successful season in 2024. So, of course, he did one about the Raiders. I thought it was really good, and we'll talk about it. I'll give my feedback. I'll let you hear his feedback, and a lot more. We'll do that all in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, I always like to hit you with the news and notes, but today I'll let you hear a call from a member of Raider Nation that's pretty critical about the Davante Adams situation. And really, I'm not deep diving into the Davante Adams situation anymore. I've given my piece. I've given my thoughts on it, but I'll let you hear this call from, again, a member of Raider Nation who's a longtime listener of the show and is very critical of the conversation. So we'll let you hear what he has to say. I'll give my feedback, and that'll be a wrap. We'll do that here in segment number 1 after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Again, the best piece of news, Sunday, the rookies report to training camp. The better piece of news on the 23rd, the veterans report to training camp. And the even better part of news than that, on Wednesday, I should say, the 24th, is when training camp actually gets started. That'll be the first day of practice. So we'll actually be talking about some Raider football as they start to put this team together in 2024. That's the good news. The bad news is, well, of course, there's still some lingering effect from the Davante Adams conversation, and that's to be understood. I'm not, over critical about anyone that's still talking about that situation because, well, everybody's talking about it. I've done way too many radio shows the past few days or interviews, I should say, that have to do with Davante Adams. And it is starting to cool down a little bit, but there's a very critical call that we received on the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. And because I want to make sure that everyone knows I'm not ducking any calls, I won't run from any call, even if it's critical of me or anything else or the subject we're talking about, I don't have any problem with that. So I do appreciate the feedback at 707-654-4693. So let's fire it up. Raider Eddie, he's hitting us up. He's calling out of Denver, talking about Davante Adams, and, again, very critical on why we're talking about him. Here he is, Raider Eddie.
Thank you. What's up? This is Raider Eddie in Denver. Hey, just listening to the podcast today, Thursday morning, talking about Davante. Why are we talking about Davante? Because of the rumblings, because Davante's talking about Aaron Rodgers. Davante's soundbite from the show Receiver was seen by the world recently. Let's just kind of talk about that. The way you're framing this conversation so far is, hey, let's listen to Davante. There's all these other people talking. Let's listen to Davante. The soundbite that you just shared this morning on the podcast, over half the soundbite, he's talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's talking about, hey, when you have chemistry with the guy, when you've been with the guy, why wouldn't you want to join up with the guy? He did say before that, hey, I'm happy with the Raiders as long as they're happy with me. That's what I expect to see. He also said, why would I be out here talking about another team? In the same soundbite, Q, he continues to now talk about Rodgers. Okay, so this this is just the reality. Let's kind of uncover pull back the covers a little bit to see what's actually happening here. Why would I talk about another team? Now let me talk about Aaron Rodgers for the majority of this, this conversation, or at least of this sound bite, okay? Davante does this a lot. He drops something, oh, that wasn't me, drops something else, some semi-cryptic, oh, that wasn't, you guys misconstrued it. No, you got to own up to what you are communicating. Let's listen to Davante, Q. All right, fine. He did say on that receiver, show, get me up out of here when he's taking these hits. You know what, Q? I think a superstar needs to actually go be a problem solver, go talk to his quarterback, go talk to his offensive coordinator. Don't come back to the sideline, get me up out of here. I don't hear other players doing that, and Davante's not paid to be a complainer. He's paid to be a leader. Q, there's also a pattern. With AP as head coach, Davante whined in the locker room after a win because he didn't get his numbers. I do believe that happened. I can't remember which game it was. Call me out if it's not true. But Q, I'm just, again, like I've said before, dipping this show in reality a little bit. I know it's a fan-based show, but sometimes it's not a bad thing to look at the whole picture.
Eddie, thanks so much for the call, as always. I appreciate you. Appreciate the critique. Right. And first of all, the receivers show that everyone is reacting to what Davante Adams said. As it's a reality show, you realize it was recorded in the 2023 season. So everything that he's saying about you got to get me out of here so I don't get killed happened during the regular season. So it's not like he's saying that during mandatory minicamp and training camp and all that. I mean, this literally happened during the regular season, which the way he was getting drilled, and believe me, I was there when he was getting drilled even in training camp when the 49ers lumped him up and he had to leave the field, right? He had to get helped off the field. We didn't know what was going to happen. And you saw in the receiver series how he got lumped up against the Chargers and how banged up he was and what he had to do to get back onto the field. And that went on throughout the course of the year. So, yeah, you can see the frustration. You brought up him complaining about, targets or whatever the case may be after a win. That was while Josh McDaniels was the head coach, but that's fine. I understand where you're coming from. And look, Davante, the one thing I could tell you, and I'm not saying that you're not onto something, but Davante always says what's on his mind, and he'll say what he means, and he'll say it for a reason, right? Yeah, he'll put stuff out there. He is not, he's not going to run from anything. He'll put it out there. And, the thing about it is, just like I play your call and I don't run from your call, I have no reason, and it's like you imply that I'm trying to protect players or I'm trying to push a narrative that I'm not trying to push. I have no reason to try to protect the player, right? Whether it be Jack Jones, whether it be Davante Adams, whether it be AP, whatever it is. But it seems like there's always something that you've got to say that is very like me having to try to control the narrative when I don't have to control anything. These guys don't need me to speak for them at all, right? Believe me, half of them don't worry about a thing that I say. Right. So it's not, it's not that serious. So I think you're giving me too much power there, thinking that I'm trying to push a narrative. I'm saying, listen to what Davante says. He said he's in lockstep with the Raiders. He feels good about this team. And as far as he knows, they feel good about him. Did he go on to talk about Aaron Rodgers? Sure. Right. Because Aaron Rodgers brought him up. But just because I don't want to push a narrative, I'll let you hear what Davante Adams had to say on Club Shay Shay. That's with Shannon Sharp, talking about the rumors that his name is out there as Aaron Rodgers started the whole thing when he said he wants to play with, or he can't wait to play with Davante again. And then I'll address it. So here's what Davante had to say on Club Shay Shay as I played it on the show on Thursday. Check it out.
When I hate to say it like this because it makes me sound like I'm trying to put myself on a pedestal, but when you're a certain level of player, you don't have to come from you, and it oftentimes is not coming from you. And I'm not the type of person that I enjoy going and putting that type of stuff out there when I'm actively on the Raiders.
Right.
What do I look like sitting here talking to other people about being on another team?
Right.
And that's how I still feel about it right now. Like, I'm locked in with the Raiders, and I really feel good about this team. As far as I know, they feel good about me. And if that ever changed, if that got to a point where they weren't feeling the same way, I ain't done playing. So obviously we would figure out whatever we needed to figure out. But in the thought of playing with Aaron is obviously amazing. Like, right. I already know what that's like, which was similar to why I came here and and reunited with Derek was because I had familiarity with it, and anytime you have that, it gives you a little bit more confidence than starting fresh with somebody that you never played with before.
Right.
And it helps that when they're the best to ever play the game, or at least that's how I feel. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's certainly how I feel.
Yes, he's clearly one of the best.
And he's given me an opportunity to show the world what I can do, and having him to start out with, I'm sure, that what we was talking about earlier about, people say, did Aaron create you or this and that? No, but naturally, if you have a player that's a generational talent,
definitely help elevate you.
Exactly. And you looked at the next year when I wasn't there with him, it didn't look the same.
Right.
So if you got a tandem, anytime that you got somebody with some talent, they're going to make each other better.
Again, lockstep with the Raiders. That's where he's at. He feels good about this team. And as far as he knows, they feel good about him, which I think is fair because we know in sports, a team could be loyal to you to win for so long, and then they're not, right? So as far as he knows that the team is good with him, there may come a point when he wants to be a Raider and the Raiders like, yeah, no thanks. We don't want to pay you, right? That's a reality. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's a reality. We all know how this game works. The NFL stands for not for long. Right? Once you cannot do what a team wants you to do at a certain level, they're ready to move on from you. So, yeah, he's brought up Aaron Rodgers and said that, if he had to play with someone else, he would love to play with Aaron again because of the chemistry. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Look, I want to be a Raider, but if I'm not going to be, then, hey, I wouldn't mind being with Rodgers. I don't think that that's a problem. Again, and that's not me trying to protect Davante. He sure as hell don't need me to protect him, right? Davante's a grown man, right? I am not that guy. I'm not sure what gave you that impression and what makes you think that. That's fine. I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion, but honestly, that was that, right? I mean, the whole Davante stuff is, to me, not even a big deal, something that I actually drug my feet on even talking about, but since it's being talked about everywhere, it would be silly of me to close my eyes and act like it's not there, or close my ears and act like I can't hear it. So that would be more of, hey, Q's trying to protect him by not even talking about it than anything, and I'm not doing that either. So hopefully that explains it. Hopefully that clears it up a lot. I'm sure it didn't, but that's cool. Like I said, I'm always appreciative of your call, your text, your time, whatever the case may be, right? There's plenty of different people you can listen to, plenty of different people you can call into if you so choose to, but you listen to me and you call here, so that's cool. I appreciate that, regardless if we agree or not. So thank you so much for that. I do appreciate you. Coming up in segment number 2, we'll talk about Adam Rank from NFL.com, NFL Network. He put out a piece, State of the Las Vegas Raiders. Can Antonio Pierce deliver playoff berth in his first full season as the head man? We'll break it down. I'll explain what Adam's piece was all about, and I'll give my thoughts on it and let you hear his thoughts as well. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get into that after I tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the show, including eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Every time I say that part, I think of Too Short song, Burn Rubber, but that's a side note. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I also want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and even quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. As we close out the week strong, want to get into this article from Adam Rank from NFL.com. NFL Network does a fantastic job with both. I've been trying to get him on my radio show the past couple days to kind of break it down and talk about his article, but he's really busy, as you can imagine, getting ready for training camp, and our times just have not aligned. But at some point soon, right, whether it be sometime today or maybe even this weekend, I'll be able to catch up with him and talk about this article. But I thought it was fantastic, and it was real fitting as the Raiders get to training camp coming up next week. It's called State of the Las Vegas Raiders. Can Antonio Pierce deliver playoff berth in first full season as the head man? And again, you can find this on NFL.com right now. So he goes over a bunch of different categories, from the 2024 brain trust, which is, the coaches, AP, offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, defensive coordinator, all that, just like the coaches and coordinators. Roster reshuffling. So getting into, see some guys that left, talk about the draft picks, guys that they signed as free agents. Then new faces to know. Bigger names in the free agency, like Christian Wilkins, like a Gardner Minshew, right? Some big-time names that could be added to the mix to really help this team. State of the quarterback room. Obviously, that's Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Most important non-quarterback. Talks about Max Crosby. Then he gives his hottest Raiders fantasy take. Talks about Davante Adams and how many yards receiving and how big of a factor he could be offensively. And then he gives 3 key dates, 3 dates that he thinks are very important for the success of the Raiders in 2024. The first game of the season being the first one, right? He gave 2 other dates. One, I believe, was that Kansas City game, that Black Friday game, and I can't remember what the other one was. I'll have to look it up. But you get the point. There was 3 key dates, 3 games that he was really looking at that's going to tell a lot about this Raiders team. And then finally he gets to the question, what is it going to take for the Raiders to consider 2024 a success? And the options are A, win the Super Bowl, B, make a playoff run, C, earn a playoff berth, D, finish above 500, and E, show progress. So before I give you his answer, I'll tell you mine. Mine is C, earn a playoff berth. And I think that E, show progress, was cool a long time ago. Show progress was what the Raiders did after AP took over November 1st. And that might not necessarily be fair, but Raider Nation has been far too long since the Raiders have playoffs. So showing progress, I think, is out the door. Showing progress was great when AP was the interim coach and they were showing that, hey, they can play for this guy. They do want to play for this guy. He does have the pulse of Raider Nation. He can turn the culture around. He can make this team a really good team. That was showing progress. Finish above 500? Okay, sure. That would make them, 9-8? Probably missing the playoffs, but 9-8 is where the window for me started, right? I've been saying that I think they're a 9-win team or a 10-win team. Preferably, I'd like to see them at 10 wins because that gives them such a better chance to make the playoffs, where 9 wins most likely won't. But in all reality, Raider Nation, I think C, earn a playoff berth, is what it's all about for the Raiders in 2024. Now, I spent a lot of time on my radio show on Thursday talking about this as well and kind of getting the pulse of Raider Nation that was giving some feedback. And there were some that said, win the Super Bowl, Q. No one cares about second place, right? If you're not first, you're last. I understand. I subscribe to that as well, right? I'm a very competitive dude. It's like win everything. But, I'm also a guy that lives in the world of reality, right? This team has not consistently made the playoffs in 20-plus years, right? They made it twice in the last, 21 seasons? So, it's not a reality where I think, okay, this team is just going to go from, being a team full of chaos, a team that, got a coach that's an interim to steady the ship the rest of the way in 2023. Then he's going to come in 2024 with some questions on offense and find a way to win the Super Bowl. Not saying it's impossible, but I don't want to live in a world where I'm saying that that's what's going to be a success. Yeah, for sure, that'd be a success if that happened, but I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. Make a playoff run? Sounds good. I'd like to see a playoff run. I think we'd all like to see a playoff run. But honestly, I think earning a playoff berth is fair, and I think it's realistic. I think that should be the expectations. And the reason I say that, and the reason why I believe it is because of the head coach, AP. And I know I'm putting a lot of eggs in the basket of AP and thinking that he's going to turn water into wine, but I think that he somewhat can, right, without being that guy, right? Just saying. I mean, I think that he somewhat could help steady this ship where they could end up earning a playoff berth. They have a defense. We've talked about it in great length. We talked about how good that defense could be and how they can, guide this team and keep them in every game. I don't think that they're going to be a team that's blown out, and I do believe that they're going to get good, consistent quarterback play. Do I think it's going to be great and elite quarterback play? No, but I think they're going to get good, consistent quarterback play, and that's going to be enough for them to get obviously more than 20 points a game, and they're going to win some games. But what really stood out to me the most is when the Raiders were getting ready to go to Kansas City and take on the Chiefs on that Christmas day. AP stood in the media room there at the Intermountain Health Performance Center and said, "We're tired of losing to those guys. We're sick of it." He said, "I went in the locker room and said, okay, guys, enough is enough. We're done." Right? Yes, they beat us. They win. And he actually said that the first time they played the Chiefs, and they came up short at Allegiant Stadium, but they had them in a good position at first. Remember, Josh Jacobs took off on that long run, and it's like, oh, man, the Raiders got the Chiefs at home, and then they ended up losing the game. And so they were upset that game they fell a little bit short, but then they got them back in Arrowhead on Christmas morning. But he said, enough's enough. We're tired of losing to these guys. We're not intimidated by them. We can't be intimidated by them. And the one thing that stands out to me about the teams that play the Chiefs, more times than not, teams try to change who they are to play the Chiefs. And the biggest example of that was the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship game. Still don't know why they did that. But with that being said, the Raiders understand what it's going to take for them. Not for every other team. They don't need to figure out every other team. But for the Raiders to beat the Chiefs, they understand what they've got to do. They've got to play hard-nosed defense. They've got to punch them in the mouth. They've got to be very physical with them. They can't give up big plays, right? They've got to play disciplined ball, and that's what they did on Christmas. And I'm sure that what AP is going to say when the 53-man roster is set, when they're ready to go into L.A. for the first game of the season against the Chargers, he's going to say, okay, guys, all right, fellas, this not making the playoff stuff is over. We're done. We're done with that. It's old. We're not settling for that. No more. And sometimes it's just a mindset. And I know it's easier said than done. Oh, hey, we're not going to miss the playoffs. We're going to go. And you can't snap your fingers and do that. But if you do have in your mindset that this team is going to the playoffs, somehow, some way, we're going to find a way to get it done, you're already in the right direction. And I think that that's what it's about. I think that this team understands what they've got to do. Ideally, they win the division, right? But, again, I'm not being greedy. I'm just saying earn a playoff berth makes a lot of sense, right? Again, if they win the division, that'd be fantastic. That'll give them an opportunity to do B, which is make a playoff run. But I'm just saying get to the playoffs. This Raiders team needs to find a way to get to the playoffs, and then next year's Raiders team needs to find a way to get to the playoffs, and then a year after that, they need to find a way to get to the playoffs. This team needs to get to the playoffs consistently. They need to stop doing all this every 4 or 5 year stuff, right? When I can go back and say, man, remember 2021? Remember when they went to Cincinnati and, I thought they had a chance to win at the end, but they didn't? And remember 2016 when they were so good, and if it hadn't been for Derek Carr breaking his ankle, who knows what would happen? The fact that I have to go back to that all the time is terrible, right? That's going back 8 years. Shouldn't have to do that, right? This team should be able to get into the playoffs consistently, and it should start this season. So my answer is earn a playoff berth. And again, the options are A, win the Super Bowl, B, make a playoff run, C, earn a playoff berth, D, finish above 500, and E, show progress. I think E is way out the door. I don't even think that's part of the conversation. Adam Rank's answer was C, earn a playoff berth. And he goes on to say, over the past 21 seasons, the Raiders have made the playoffs just twice. They have not won a postseason contest since 2002 AFC Championship game. That's the second longest drought in the league, only behind the Dolphins, 23 years without a playoff win, and just ahead of the Commanders with 18 years. This franchise last won a division title in 2002, which is the second longest streak in the league, only behind the Cleveland Browns, has gone 31 seasons. I'm not saying Vegas needs to take the AFC West. After all, the Chiefs have won 8 straight division titles. But for this season to be a success, the Raiders must get back to the tournament, maybe even win a game. That's from Adam Rank on NFL.com. Again, I'm going to have him as a guest on my radio show. We're going to find a way to coordinate this and make it work. But I agree with him 100%. For this season to be a success, I think when it's all said and done, AP will look back. Mark Davis will look back. The front office will look back. Sandra Douglas Morgan will look back. Everyone in that building, the Intermountain Health Performance Center, will look back, including the players in that locker room, if the Raiders don't make the playoffs and say this season was not a success. It's just that simple. Now, there is one caveat, right? We've seen teams that have won double-digit games that just fall short for some reason. It's very rare that would happen, that a team that wins 10 games doesn't make the playoffs, but it has happened before. So maybe another team just gets super hot, and it's like, wow, even with 10 wins, you couldn't make the playoffs. Then I could say, all right, well, maybe it wasn't a failure because 99.9% of the time, that team's making the playoffs. But this needs to be a playoff team, straight up. And I don't care about the quarterback. I don't care about the offensive line. I don't care about the running back being new. I don't care about the cornerback across from Jack Jones. They have enough on this team, in my opinion, to make the playoffs. Right? The Pittsburgh Steelers made the playoffs last season. I think the Raiders have more talent than the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Cleveland Browns made the playoffs last season. I think the Raiders have more talent than the Cleveland Browns, right? I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, I pull up the list all the time, and I don't have it with me right now because I'm talking about it. Yes, I do. Hold on. I'll tell you right now. All the teams that made the playoffs last year. I got it right here. I like to keep it with me just to look at it. Buffalo won the division 11-6. Baltimore won the division 13-4. Houston won the division 10-7. KC won their division 11-6. The wild cards: Cleveland 11-6, Miami 11-6, Pittsburgh 10-7. So there's that. And then the Bengals, the Jaguars, Colts, and Raiders all missed. Bengals, Jacksonville, and Indianapolis all had 9 wins, and the Raiders had 8. So again, I think that the Raiders are just as talented, if not more than I already said, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Miami probably has more offensive firepower, but they don't have more defensive firepower. That's for sure. Buffalo, who knows what they're going to do this year? No Stephon Diggs. Baltimore, I think they're super talented. Houston has a great quarterback in C.J. Stroud, and Kansas City is Kansas City. But there's at least, in my opinion, 3 wild card spots that should be up for grabs, and the Raiders should be able to get at least one of them. Just saying. That's just my expectations for 2024 for this team to call it a success. What says you? 707-654-4693 should be a good question to think about over the course of the weekend. Of course, we'll get your responses on Monday's show as we're at Costa Mesa. In Costa Mesa, the spot for Training Camp 2024. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. Straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to let you know that today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is also being brought to you by BetterHelp. I've got back from a much-needed mind-clearing and calming vacation just in time for, well, the season to come along, right? Training camp and everything to come about, ready to get full throttle. I had to relax. I had to chill out for a while, take a break from everything from podcasts to radio to interviews, all that stuff, just to, calm the nerves a little bit, right? Just because you get so caught up and so wound up that you're kind of, I don't want to say always on edge, but at times you're always on edge. And, it's tough to make life-changing decisions or even smaller decisions that might end up seeming bigger because you are on edge or you are wound up and, you need someone to talk to. And sometimes the people that you talk to aren't really the people that you should be talking to because they can have some kind of opinion and they have, they hold a certain place in your life where they may want to lean one way or the other, and they might want to try to influence you. Well, that's where BetterHelp can come into play. They offer opportunities at therapy that best fits you. It's entirely online, so it's convenient. It's able to be flexible and fit your schedule. You can fill out a quick questionnaire, get matched up with a licensed therapist. If you need to switch therapists at any time, there's no additional charge. You could do that. You could talk with someone with no agenda on your life. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today. You'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We heard a call earlier in the show, segment number 1 from Raider Eddie in Denver. Now let's get a text from the 650. It says, "Hey, Q. Good morning, heading into work, listening to the podcast, my first listen every morning. But on the Adams fade, I swear ever since they got him, the NFL has been waiting for the Raiders to trade him. They can't stand to see the Raiders have a grade A talent. Most of sports media wants it to happen so bad they can constantly put it out there in the air. The league has never liked the Raiders and wants nothing but to keep clowning on our team. I can't wait till the season starts. They'll shut a lot more people up and really go out there and ball. But love the show, Q. Appreciate all that you do, and have a blessed day." That's a text from the 650. And I said that the other day on my radio show. I was like, man, it seems like ever since Davante has arrived with the Raiders, that somebody's been trying to get him away from the Raiders. It absolutely 100% feels like that. And, for one reason or the other, of course, when it comes to the Jets, it's all about Aaron Rodgers. And, of course, the Jets being in New York, being in the number 1 media market, all eyes on everyone wants the Jets to be good so bad. They want them to be good so bad. It's so funny. Like Greeny was talking about, he could see Adams being a Jet and be traded by Halloween. I could see the Jets stinking by Halloween. I could see the Jets looking up and being like, man, what happened to this season? And being trashed by Halloween. It's not like that they're some juggernaut. It's not like they're Kansas City, who's won the division 8 years in a row, right? They're still the Jets. But because they're in New York, they're in the biggest media market, and everybody is so desperate for them to be good again that they're trying to, just throw everything into the air, throw it against the wall, and hope it sticks. So, yeah, man, it's pretty funny the way that it's pushed out there like that. But it's there. Like I tell everyone, even when I'm on my national show, I can't wait till training camp starts and there's actually something to talk about instead of speculation about Davante Adams, who's very happy in the silver and black. Thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from JD from SLC. He's calling to talk about how he became a fan of the Raiders. Here he is, JD.
Hey, Q, this is JD from SLC. I'm just calling to bring out or talk about where I became a Raider fan. I grew up for the first 12 years of my life in Southern California, lived in Ontario, then Mariloma. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, the Niners were the team, or one of the best teams. And I was a big BYU fan. My parents were, so I was a big Steve Young fan. So my family were Niner fans. And just like a lot of people that have called in already, we love Tecmo Bowl, me and my older brother. But my older brother would not let me be the Niners because he had to be the Niners. So, of course, I chose Bo Jackson and the Raiders, and just fell in love with the silver and black, the Raider mystique, the bad boy image, everything about it. And so because of my brother and Tecmo Bowl, my brother not letting me be the Niners, dang older brothers, it changed my life to where I am a diehard Raider. And I don't know, the last 20 years haven't been great for it, but it will bleed silver and black till I die. And just wanted to, I always thought I was one of the only people that became a Raider fan due to Tecmo Bowl, but sounds like I wasn't. Anyway, you have a wonderful day, Q.
JD, thanks for the story. It's funny, man, how a video game helped shape your fandom. And honestly, like you said, so many people have chimed in and said Tecmo Bowl, Tecmo Bowl, Tecmo Bowl helped get me where I am as far as a Raider fan. And I'll tell you, that was the ultimate cheat code, playing with Bo Jackson and the Raiders in Tecmo Bowl. Like, there was nothing you could do. I used to be that annoying guy that I'd play against my friend. I'd run that sweep to the left, and then it was over, right? I'd just run out the clock. I'd go around and around because you couldn't stop it. You knew you couldn't stop it. There was no way, right? As soon as they hit the outside, the players weren't fast enough to catch up to Bo. So I'd run up to the goal line, run the whole base of the goal line, go all the way back down the field to the goal line, go across that. But I don't know why anyone played it with me, because it was the most boring thing you could ever do. You're standing there watching this character run around the whole field. But that's what I did on that game, and I'm sure that most of us did. It's just so funny how that game influenced so many folks to be Raider fans. But it's funny. I say that out loud, but the more I think about it, right? I mean, how much did the Raiders influence, hip hop music with NWA and Ice Cube and just hip hop in general, right? I remember my buddies in high school, even guys that weren't Raider fans, everyone wanted to have a Raider starter jacket. Everyone wanted to have a Raider hat. Remember when parkas came out? Everyone wanted to have a Raider parka. And then we even had the longer parkas. I can't remember, the stadium jackets. That's what they were called. And then everyone wanted to have a Raiders one of those. Right? I mean, and again, they didn't have to be fans, but it was just the colors, the fashion, the style, the toughness that it kind of portrayed. Like, oh, man, you're one of those fans? Oh, yeah, you got a little edge to you, right? I mean, someone saw you in a Raiders jacket or Raider hat or, Raider colors or whatever, it's just some kind of T-shirt. There was always that portrayal like, oh, man, that dude's got a little edge to him, right? Even if you didn't. You might be portrayed like that. So it's funny, man, how the Raiders had so much influence on just life in general, from video games to clothes to music, just to everyday walk of life. So I totally get it, man. Really good call. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. Up next, got a text from DJ in South Central. He said, at the age of 12 in 1976, growing up in L.A., I was a Rams fan. I liked the Oakland Raiders because of their uniforms, watching them on Monday Night Football. However, I didn't consider myself a fan. But after yet another Rams loss in the playoffs to the Vikings, the Mud Bowl, I watched the Raiders annihilate the hated Vikings in the Super Bowl and became a fan. When they moved to L.A. and the Rams moved to Orange County, I was done with the Rams. Joined Raider Nation, and I never looked back. Thanks, Q, for the opportunity to tell my little story. Raiders, that's DJ in South Central. That's awesome. I love it, right? I mean, hey, you admit it. I was a Rams fan. But, all of a sudden the Raiders, they changed my mind. They changed my decision. They changed my soul, especially when they moved to L.A. And that was the big thing. Like, everyone talks about the Raiders and how many times they've moved. But think about how many families and homes that they've influenced when they did move, right? And even it's trying to happen. We talked about it earlier in the week here on the show. They're trying to make that happen in Las Vegas. It's obviously a lot slower sledding. This is a city where people come from all over walks of earth, right? I mean, I say it all the time. Nobody's from Las Vegas, and I know there's people from Las Vegas, but it's not. It just seems like you meet people. It's like, hey, I'm from Kansas City. I'm from Texas. I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from you fill in the blanks, right? It's just all over the place. So they're trying to build their fan base here as well. But that move to LA, how big was that? Especially because they were good, right? They go to LA and win a Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, that's going to definitely shape so many lives. And then going back to the call and talk about, hip hop and NWA and just the influence that they had. I mean, they were rock stars, right? So I can understand how they just influenced so much. And really good story, man. Definitely appreciate you. Thanks so much for the text. Up next, got a call from Raider X. He's calling to talk about all the rumors that are flying around and brings up the fact that all the rumors flying around is not exclusive to just the Raiders, and he explains why. Here he is, Raider X.
Hey, Q, this is Raider X. I just wanted to chime in before we kick it off and go into, training camp and all these rumors and things going on about everybody want to talk Raiders, even the Raider Nation. But, just hearing all this Davante, Adams rumors and talking about, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and how the Raiders are, this and that and that. Just really kind of tired of it because, they're all talking about, the ifs. Just like the statements of them going to the Jets. I mean, the Raiders pretty much would be fools because of the dead cap impact. Yeah, is it a possibility? Does it look like the long game? Yeah, there's a lot of ifs. But, realistically, every team has the same type of situation if they're stinking it up in the middle of the season. Most teams that have, that are bridge teams or teams in the middle there, in the middle of the pack, that have a losing season and have a high, salary of player that has some value, yeah, they're going to want to dump. Isn't that, the typical, theory of, of all major league sports? So specifically, even looking at baseball, they all dump. They dump that salary so that they can recoup for the next year. So why wouldn't they consider, moving, Adams at that time? What we need to really, think of is, as Raider Nation, is what free agent player are we going to add with that $30+ million available right now on the salary cap to solidify either somewhere on the offense or somewhere on the defense, specifically looking at the quarterback. That's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about all these big ifs. Now, that might be a conversation a month down the road or 2 months down the road. Hopefully not. But I look forward to a damn good Raider season because I think they're going to do fantastic. I am Raider Nation through and through. Raiders!
X-Man, thanks for the call. Appreciate you as always, brother. And you're right. Right? It's not just exclusive to the Raiders. Any team that has a big-time star, and if they don't get off to a hot start, then all of a sudden the conversation is like, well, maybe that team wants to trade that player. Maybe that player wants to, or team wants to move on, or that guy wants to get out of there. That's absolutely true. This one just happened to happen because, well, Aaron Rodgers started talking, and as soon as he started talking and that little 22-second video and that little soundbite came out, then it was like wildfire. So, it's just kind of one of those names, and Davante obviously is a big-time player, and as we had earlier, the call earlier, ever since the Raiders acquired Davante, it seems like everyone's been trying to get him out of Las Vegas. So there's that. As far as that free agent player that you want to talk about, I don't really think that there's a player to talk about at this point. I don't know how the Raiders feel about their current roster and the way they feel about their rooms, like the cornerback room or the offensive line room. Like, I don't know. I don't know if they feel like that this roster is solid because they do have plenty of cap space money. But Tom Telesco told us he didn't expect to go out and make any kind of moves. They was looking at a cornerback in, I think, Steven Nelson. They were looking at him at one point, and then he retired. So they haven't really addressed that. I think, and this is just me thinking out loud, I think what they're going to do is get into training camp, let a week go, maybe a couple weeks go, and then evaluate where they feel like they are. And if they feel like that they're in a place where, yeah, we need to go out and get a veteran for that cornerback position, then they will. I don't think anything's going to happen anytime soon. So, it's like it's the same thing about, ifs could happen. I'd be talking about ifs with the free agent as well. So, I mean, you can't really win in that situation. It's if, something could happen potentially with Davante down the road, if something could happen with a potential free agent down the road. It's all a bunch of ifs at this stage of the game because we don't know. We're not at camp. We're not seeing what they say. Now, if I see in camp, I see someone just getting burned and toasted in the secondary, then I'll probably come on here and say, I don't know how the Raiders feel, but I feel like they better go get somebody. But until I see something, it's all a bunch of ifs. Everything's an if. the last, month and a half has been a bunch of ifs because that's all we have to go off of right now. Thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. One last text. It's a pretty lengthy text. It's from the 206. What's up, Q? Longtime listener, big fan of what you do and what you brought to Raider Nation. Always filling our ears with everything Raiders. I just got around to listening to Tuesday's episode where you covered 65 years of Raider football. I love the logo and post that they made on Instagram. I can't wait to put that patch on one of my jerseys. Appreciate you sharing when it all started for you as a Raider fan, and it got me thinking about my earliest memories going back to watching Gannon, Rice, Brown, Garner, and that team be great. Making footballs out of socks and sidearming that thing inside the house, creating myself in Madden and playing for the Raiders. My brother bought me my first Raider jersey. It was a white Randy Moss jersey. I get the hate he gets, but that was my guy as a kid, and I still have that jersey. I remember proudly rocking my Raider gear at school, even when they were going 2-14 and 4-12, and the other kids laughed and scoffed. That ain't stopped me. There's so much I want to add, but I don't want to go too long. 31 years old now, and I don't regret being a Raiders fan. That's a day that'll never come. It's that Raiders mystique. It's hard to describe to someone who isn't a Raider fan, but I believe Raider Nation knows exactly what I mean. It's in my DNA. Thank you for allowing listeners to chime in. I can't wait for the season. I dream and visualize often of us hoisting our fourth Lombardi very, very soon. I really believe AP has us close to it as we've ever been. Raiders. That's a text there from the 206. No name attached to it. Great text. Great text. Next time, leave your name so I don't have to use your area code. But hell of a story right there. And I'll tell you, man, you ain't the only one that was a Randy Moss fan, right? I was so excited when the Raiders acquired him. I remember getting a black Randy Moss jersey, that number 18, and I remember Keek the Sneak putting Randy Moss's name in super hyphy, right? I mean, the whole town was going wild because Randy was going to be a Raider and everything was going to be great, and they were going to throw the ball deep all day, and he was going to get nothing but touchdowns, and it looked good at first, right? I still remember his first game when he caught a touchdown pass like immediately to open up the game, and, well, everything kind of went downhill from there, and now he claims he was never a Raider, and so that's why he gets the hate now, but no one can ever deny the talent that was Randy Moss. That dude was fantastic. Obviously, we saw what he did with the New England Patriots when he went on to break records, even though they lost that Super Bowl. But the talent who is Randy Moss, you can't deny. Him being a Raider, well, that's a different story because he'll say that he was never a Raider. But thanks for that text, man. Fantastic stuff. I appreciate you. Still got a call from Jacob in Hanford, a text from Hollow in NorCal. We'll get that on Monday. Plus, we'll get your feedback from the conversation that we had in segment number 2 talking about what it will take for the Raiders to consider 2024 a successful season. What do you think it's going to take? Let us know your thoughts. Matter of fact, the choices were from Adam Rank's piece: win the Super Bowl, make a playoff run, earn a playoff berth, finish above 500, or show progress. So let me know your thoughts on that. But like I said, that'll do it for today's show, and that'll do it for the week. Thanks again for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen every day. You want to get caught up on the other teams on the Raiders schedule, all you got to do is tune in to all or any of our other shows we have on the Locked On Podcast Network. We got all 32 teams represented. We have over 200 total shows across the network in different sports: college football, basketball, Major League Baseball, hockey, and a whole lot more. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family, and most importantly, as always, just win, baby.